New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And hello again, dear ones. Dr. Robert with you over here.
Rev Brz right here.
And your guest, Mark Gilbert, right here.
Yes, our guest, Reverend Dr. Mark Gilbert, is with us today, all the way from the other side of the Denver metro area. So, folks, you got the trifecta here. You got three different suburbs of Denver all getting together today in different ways to be a part of what we're doing. So, and I realized this morning, Dr. Mark, it's been almost 2 years. It's been just over 2 years since we've had you on this program. So we are woefully short in inviting you back here, and really grateful that you're able to be with us today.
Well, it's great to be on, and I appreciate you inviting me, but I don't feel like I'm missing New Thought Media Network since I do the Saturday morning show periodically and speak at Elzea Center.
Yes.
Plus, we got the new show there I know we're going to talk about too.
Exactly. So, but before we dive into that, give everybody watching just that overview of you and who you are and your ministry and what we need to know about you to get the conversation started today.
Oh, sure. What you need to know about me is after a long time federal career, became a minister late in life in New Thought. I found New Thought through Mile High Church in Lakewood, Colorado. In the 1990s, I began training with Science of Mind. In early 2000s, practitioner, and then in 2007, minister, ordained many years ago. I've worked as a minister at the New Dawn Center for Spiritual Living. I worked 10 years for CSL's home office as their licensing manager, and as well as their global services coordinator. And after retiring from there, I call it retiring, but I have continued to do things through my own website, Conscious Bridge, wrote some books, go around training, and I've been on the board of the Science of Mind Archives for several years, where I'm their key researcher. For those of you who might have picked up the Ernest Holmes at Asilomar book, that was a product that I compiled and wrote the introduction for. So got a lot of things that I've been enjoying doing with New Thought, and helping the New Thought Media Network is a key part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll express our gratitude right up front that you've been one of those people all the way along the way that anytime I call and say, hey, you want to get involved over here or over there, you say yes. And I love that. And that all led to you calling me and saying, hey, I got a new idea for a program. What do you think of this? And so let's talk about that a little bit. Let's let people in a little bit of the story of what's happening there.
Yeah. For those of you who may know Reverend Brz, she was one of the senior minister at the Northern Colorado Center for Spiritual Living for a number of years, also served at CSL's home office. And she and I have been friends for over 20 years. And so we get together socially every once in a while, usually for lunches once a month and that kind of thing, where we get into spiritual conversations. And it was in those conversations that we said, hey, we should do a program. And so I actually brought her on as a guest on the Saturday morning show back last December consciously, it was a trial run for the two of us to see if we enjoyed bantering about, talking about spiritual topics. And we had such a fun time doing that the idea then just snowballed into, what if we put together a show where we talked about Science of Mind from our perspective, how we look at it, where it's going in the future, New Thought in general, and take topics of the day that we think are pertinent and just diving deeply into each one of them. And that became the program that we've called Conversations in Mind with Barb Bew and Mark Gilbert. We'll be putting together our 10th episode later this week. The 9th one, I think, goes out today. And it's just been fun. And what we do is we got a host of topics we keep coming up with, where we've been talking about AI. We've been talking about what New Thought has to say about aging. We've been talking about ideas of what is mind and on and on. So we have a whole list of things that we want. Every time we talk about one subject, we end up with about 3 or 4 more ideas for things that we want to delve into. And we don't script them. I want to say that. We don't script it. It's for the most part, we do have our topics picked for the following week, and we think on them. And then when we come together, we just feed off of each other. And some interesting things comes out of the conversation. And we've had some good feedback from people who are watching it.
Yeah. And this is what it looks like, folks. Conversations in Mind. Today, actually, your program follows ours by a couple hours, so 4 o'clock Mountain Time on Tuesdays. And today is Enlightenment, Export, or Event or Process. So give us the sneak peek.
Yeah. What we talked about in this particular show is we were asking the question, first off, what is enlightenment? And so we discussed that. So we have sort of a general idea or agreement about what the topic we're talking about is. But then we all sort of have an idea of what we think enlightenment is. And sometimes it's this, people have this idea, oh, I'm going to have this flash of light experience where, things are, I thought everything was physical stuff in one moment, and I saw through it, and the veil was lifted, and magnificent lights and things flashed in it. I had a sort of a psychedelic experience, and that was my enlightenment experience. Is it an event? Is it a one-time event where something just clicks in our conscious awareness, or is it something where we develop an experience over time of deepening in the awareness of oneness of all life, so that enlightenment becomes more of a growth process or a spiritual path where we're slowly building up a state of enlightenment? Is it an immediate thing, or is it a process over time? The answer, of course, is it's both. But if you want more on that, you can watch the program if we get into what we talk about.
Nice. That's always a spicy topic, right? Because I think whether you go down either of those branches, it depends on the seed thought, if you will, and your perspective of what enlightenment is, right? If it's this Paul riding to Damascus and becoming Saul and getting hit by, and he was out to do Jesus harm, and now all of a sudden he's the most avid proponent. Right. Or if it's like Buddha, who over time he would look over the fence and whatever, and then he said, "Ooh, something's missing. Let me just go get into a process to get enlightened." Yeah,
and I think to that point, Elzir, which I agree with you. It's gradual, but then there's like leaps where we have like really flashes of awareness. Now, I do know. Let me back up and say that I truly believe that spirit shows up in its infinite variety of ways through the various multiplicity of all the individualized expressions of one on the planet. So every person is going to have a different enlightenment experience. And so I have heard of people who had no idea about enlightenment and then had some momentary event that occurred that just changed their life, and they saw the underlying unity of all that is in an immediate moment without any buildup to it. And I know I think most people have been more of a gradual build up to a sense of deeper and deeper awareness of the oneness of all that is, and then have leaps where they really take it to the next level. But it's not that all or none kind of thing, which is what I really thought it was back when I was in my 20s. And I would sit on the meditation cushion. I sort of got pissed off that I didn't have like some sort of like, momentary flash of insight that changed my life forever. What I had to come to grips with is that a lifetime of meditative experience changes your life too, and not expect and be disappointed by the fact that I didn't have that immediate flash of oneness.
Yeah.
Just real quick, to me, it's almost like a seeding process, right?
Mhm.
It's like I put some seeds out and a couple of them, but not all of them. And then I just, each year, I keep rotating the crop, if you will, and planting new seeds until they find the right spot. And, I think part of our challenge, and Robert and I talk about this all the time, is that the common language has become too common, in that when I say a word enlightenment, I've already got this flippant idea about what enlightenment is, right? Or what God is, for that matter. And we talk about all the time, we have to begin to find a good thesaurus to pick different words that make you go into different recesses of the brain to put that picture together so that we can expand and have these potentially momentary enlightenments, whether they're forever or a momentary thing.
Yeah, you're so right about that, LZ. In fact, there's a number of words: God, mind, consciousness, enlightenment. I find that when I use these words with certain people, I always have to stop and say, let's define what we're talking about, because I know everybody comes to the conversation with a preconceived idea about what that word means. And if we don't agree on what we're talking about, we'll be talking at each other and not really listening and gleaning from the other individual.
Yeah.
I'll drink a cup of coffee on that.
Yeti.
Now we got to define what coffee is. That could be mud water, that could be mushrooms, that could be beans, it could be anything. But I love the conversation, because I think this is one of those things for many people. They hear words, they hear things like enlightenment, and some people are like, that's not me. I'm not. I don't have access to that.
Right.
And I think most people do have those early illuminations. We hear stories from people of sitting and looking in the skies. And, for me, it was a dark sauna with a lot of good mushrooms. And there's those epiphany moments. And then we get the choice. Do we follow with that? Do we seek that out again? Do we chase that event? And if so, for me, then the process does kick in, because if we set our mind on the intention that I want to experience that again, I want to understand that better, whatever it was, we get the process to grow into it.
Yeah, and I would add to that, Robert, that we don't want to be disappointed when we don't have that experience. That I think that there's great wisdom in going through spiritual classes, learning about oneness, learning from an intellectual side, that understanding the concept of how the universe works in its unified way, and in the way in which we live and move in a field of energy and consciousness and mind that we can tap into and manifest through. That by understanding that, it sort of builds the underpinnings for the leaps in consciousness that occur through meditation and spiritual practices or mushrooms or whatever it is. And I think that, there's, again, back to the fact that there's a myriad of number of ways in which a person can experience oneness. And for me, it's in nature. Yeah. It can happen on the meditation cushion. And I'll tell you, one of the most beautiful ways it happens for me is I'll sit in meditation, and you can see all these books behind me. What I do is I'm over in a chair that's not visible, and I'll sit there in meditation, and all of a sudden a book will pop into my awareness, and I have to go find the book. And it almost comes like a little mental scavenger hunt. Well, that book, I go and look at it. I'm thumbing through it like, why was I supposed to look at this book? And then I'll see some words or a reference to another book. And I go, oh, that. And then I go find that book. And sometimes I have to order a book or go to the library and get it. But it's like finding something. It's like breadcrumbs being dropped in mind, so that I have to go find it. And then when I get to it, then I have a beautiful aha experience. And it's that aha experience. Yeah. And it's two levels of aha. One is the fact that Spirit led me on this little fun roadmap of breadcrumbs where I had to go looking around for stuff. And the second is when I finally get there and I go, oh, here's the answer of something that I've been pondering. And I didn't even know that I had it. Maybe it's a book I bought many years ago and never read, or one I've read, but I now with fresh eyes and a new perspective, I'm looking at it again and understanding it at a level I didn't before. And so it started by a little flash of something popping into my meditation. And it led me through a path where I had not only the reinforcement of Spirit's message showing up, but the wisdom that came from that. And that pushed me a little bit further along in both the intellectual side and in the deepening of the feeling of the sense of the unity of everything. Got you guys speechless. I love it.
Yeah, no. I'm just trying to figure out because what one thing that kept coming through on that for me, and right, and so we always talk about the journey. Well, the journey is just another name for the process, right? That is a synonym, and we're looking at thesaurus. And so this thing called life, there is no moment of it that has never been a process. From the moment it created, however it created, pick a story, any story, doesn't matter. It all started from obscure nothingness, if you will, and ends up with us. Well, that's a process, a couple of billion-year-old process to get us here. And so I think, getting back to that whole idea about enlightenment, this whole idea of enlightenment is a process. Now, you may get the final awakening point at some point, right, in time, but there was a whole bunch of building up. Like you said, you had the vision, the book, where is it? How is it? Who is it? And there's a journey going through that, and you didn't know exactly where it was. There was a process. I know I got that book, and I normally have it over here, and it's down, and boom, everyday life, whether it's up, whether it's down, whether it's sideways, a place of discovery, whatever that may be.
Yeah. I find this really fascinating too, because I know, Mark, that you use a librarian style software to keep track of all your books, and you've shared with us before that sometimes you realize, wait a minute, I just ordered a book that I already own, and I have a mental map. Like with my bookcase, it's like, oh, I know where that book should be. And I can find, and I'm searching for it. It should be over in this little section, because that's where I keep all my philosophy books and such. And but what you really struck me with is that breadcrumb of a process, because I have found in my Substack writing, and I know you've had a long-running blog, The Conscious Bridge, and in my Substack writing, when I first sat down, it was always like, what am I going to write about? What am I going to write about? What? And eventually I got to a point where it's like, I'm going to let the divine tell me what to write about today. And it's very much a similar process. To sit in meditation, allow my spiritual practice to inform me, and invariably something comes up. Write about this, or a book comes up, and grab this. Where's that quote again? Or what did so-and-so say about this topic? And it jump starts me. It launches me into that creative process where now I can sit down and now I can write. And I find that more often than not, I've now got a kind of a backlog of things in my Substack. There's a lot of drafts that never got published that are like, I'll get back to that one, or yeah, I'm just going to put it there so it's there and reminds me in the future. And so do you find that this meditation process is similar in your writing and in your blog work? And we want to make sure I put that up there for people to see. So you've been publishing The Conscious Bridge for a number of years now.
16 years. 16 years. 16 yeah, and it started with the same sort of thing you're talking about, Robert. But it was an emotional getting pissed off because I would sit in meditation and all these ideas would come through, and I'm going, no, I'm trying to quiet the mind, and But then I started realizing I was getting a lot of good content and sometimes just dumped into my awareness, free formed, like the whole blog would just appear, to me. And it's kind of hard to describe that, but the idea would come in and it would be, oh, that's a wonderful idea. And what I had to do was say, okay, I'm going to have to make a note of that. And I would just write a few notes down and then go back into meditation. And I had to recognize that I was being given a gift of the download, so to speak, of the content in the meditative process. And so the beginning of my blog, especially in the first few years of it when I was writing it, it was, I would say the vast majority of the blogs came from dumps that came to me consciously in meditation. And then I would write them right after the meditation. I would get up and just go, create the blog right after that. So yes, I find it. Now I still get information, but it comes in different ways. And I find that a lot of times my writing now comes to me when I'm out in nature, or I have a dog that I love, and we go out for walks every day. And there's a lot of times I'm just walking Penny around, and all of a sudden ideas for an article come to me, or it's either an article or a video or something like that.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here taking some notes because you popped up some things, and I think for me that the whole process, a part of this process that we call many different names, is how do I stay open in the process long enough, because at some point I got to close it down and collapse it on something. But how do I stay open long enough to get that clarion call, if you will, of write this, do this, say that, so that it's more resonant in the body, right? Because one thing, we know about Ernest's teaching, it is religious science, which it's how do we connect the science of everything with the consciousness and mysticism of everything, the spiritual part of it. And how do I get them, as he says, to walk hand in hand? And that part of this process is the yin and yang of how do I juxtapose the visible with the invisible and make them marry each other so that we have this nice happy thing. And I like that idea of sitting down, meditating long enough or to write or whatever. And I think that's a good key to process, enlightenment, awakening, all the different names that most people recall that now because they've been overused.
Yeah. And I would add to that list self-realization, self-awareness, waking up.
Yes.
And I would also add, we're in an interesting time in the planet. And I've had conversations with other people, and Barb and I think we got into this a little bit in our show, is that there is this movement within the consciousness of the world. Let me just stop and say, yes, everything's going to hell in a handbasket, politically, worldly. Things are in a state of crisis. We all acknowledge that. But there is an undercurrent beyond that where I see glimmers of hope-filled expressions of people who are moving to higher states of awareness, people who the interest in waking up or enlightenment or self-realization, I think is at an all-time high. I think that there are people who are letting go and moving out of the materialistic viewpoint and recognizing that this true mystery of life is not answered totally by physical science, nor is it answered typically by the dogmatic teachings of 2,000-year-old religions, either in their exoteric form. But, so that there are people who get stuck in, well, it's either we've got to follow this dogmatic religion and this is our worldview and our meaning, or, oh, that's BS. It's all physical matter and science is the new religion where we have to follow the dogma of scientific materialistic findings. And of course, with Science of Mind, we look at it and go, well, there is a material realm and there's a non-material realm. There is an aspect of life that is physical and material. that we're moving through an experience. And then there is a true realm that transcends the physical, but it's not an either or, it's an and.
Mm-hmm.
And so to your point, Alcia, we really do need to say, how do I navigate the material world of form as this individual with all this stuff going on? How do I, but at the same time, develop my ability to live in the world beyond form, to transcend form? And I think there are so many people now who are looking at tools, and new thought in a new way is one of those tools. New thought, when I first came to it, and I don't know how it was for you guys, but its emphasis was on, okay, if we can just change what we're thinking about, then our physical world's going to change. Get a new job, get a new car, get a new whatever. So, you think about the movie The Secret. It turned people to the law of attraction and the power of manifestation, but it also locked them into a materialistic mindset of looking at the world for material goods and wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a downside to that movie and that book, in the sense that people saw it only as a way to get stuff. And what I think people are waking up to now is that they're transcending the stuff and seeking a more direct relationship with the transcendent nature of life. So how do I now live in a state of transcending this world, knowing that there is oneness, that everything is united in a swirling, beautiful thing that is beyond my imagination, yet also take that wisdom and knowledge and bring it back into the world of form and live from that space. And so to the question of we've got to feed both. We've got to feed our spiritual growth and movement into states of awareness that transcend, third dimensional time and space, and then have that awareness and wisdom guide us through looking at and acting in the world of form. And when we do that, we become more about love. We become more about peace. We want to uplift every expression of the one. We look at each other as expressions of the one. And that means even those people that we don't care for or disagree with, we have to look at them and see them as the expressions of the one as well. And so how can I be a conduit for goodness and love in this third dimensional experience of time and space, and bring together wisdom and experiences of love? What kind of world do I want to exist here? How can I work towards that? At the same time, I'm keeping myself anchored in a transcendent nature that extends beyond time and space.
Yep. You're dancing around my favorite word here recently, and that's the embodiment of it. And I'm really convinced, right? We are the ones we've been waiting for. We've been saying that forever. And right now is, from my perspective, the ultimate opportunity for new thought, because the language has become commonplace. Ideas such as the law of attraction and other things have actually become commodified. And one of the people I'm reading on Substack is a woman named Betsy Chase, who was actually one of the producers of What the Bleep Do We Know? And she's got kind of a sassy, in-your-face type of writing style, but one of her things that she feels really clear about is she a little bit, I guess, would say, regrets what they did with What the Bleep, because it started this commodification. It started these people down the road of, I can make money doing this. And if new thought leaders, teachers, practitioners, believers stay silent right now, we're kind of letting the shysters and those that are just here to make some money run the ship. And so the opportunity right now is for us to step back into those conversations and be able to give people that idea. This is how you take it and make it practical. This is how you embody it in yourself, in your daily lives, in your activities at the supermarket and driving cars and at the park and all those other things. So rich conversation, and we need to let a couple of our sponsors say hello, folks. So we're going to take a quick break, let Dr. Mark have a sip of water, but we're going to come back with more here on New Thought today in the New Thought Media Network. We've got a whole lot more to get to today. So stay with us, stay tuned. Let your friends and family know what you're watching. We'll be right back in just a moment.
What if you had a place to return to every day for peace, clarity, and connection? The New Thought Ministry of Prayer offers live morning and evening prayer, along with a growing library you can access anytime. This is a space for reflection, renewal, and real spiritual practice, rooted in the understanding that something greater is already alive within you. You are welcome here. Join us live or watch anytime. The New Thought Ministry of Prayer, part of the New Thought Media Network. Come, take a moment for what matters most.
Are you passionate about media, storytelling, and making a difference? Welcome to New Thought Media Network, where your voice matters. We amplify diverse voices and share impactful stories. Join us in our mission. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to creativity and community, looking for enthusiastic volunteers who want to be part of something bigger, learn, grow, and collaborate in various aspects of media production. Incredible support and camaraderie await you here. Your contributions will help us create powerful content that resonates with audiences and drives social change.
Ready to make a difference? Visit our website www.ntmedia.org to learn more about volunteer opportunities and how you can get involved.
Find our volunteer inquiry under the Engage tab on our website, or visit www.ntmedia.org/volunteer. We look forward to connecting with you soon.
And we're back with more of New Thought today on the New Thought Media Network. My co-host, Reverend LZ, and I, and our special guest, Reverend Dr. Mark Gilbert. Now, before the break, we were just kind of getting into it because generally the whole second portion of this program is really about the future of New Thought. And what you see as that future movement, where are we headed, where are we going, how are we getting there? And we were getting into that a little bit before the break, Dr. Mark. So I'm going to kick it back over to you and let you give us some ideas. What do you see as this future movement for the philosophy, for the activity of it all?
Well, first off, I got to say, whenever you try to predict the future, it's a fool's errand. But there are things that I think we can look at that I think are trends that are important and the service of humanity and its evolutionary growth. And it relates to something we were talking about a moment ago. I mentioned the fact that I felt like that, what the secret had sort of put good things and bad things. It raised the consciousness about the law of attraction, but it also painted a materialism. And you were talking about the woman who had produced What the Bleep and how they focused too much on physical manifestations. I think those programs were important for where we were at that time. They served an important evolutionary step for shifting consciousness. And I know, Robert, you and I have had this conversation before about New Thought communities and, the fact that New Thought in itself, the underpinnings of the philosophy are in the common vernacular of people around the world. The people understand it already. They may not go to a New Thought center, but they know New Thought and they just don't call it that. They know about the power of manifestation, the power of thoughts, law of attraction, whatever words they want to give to it. So there's a common understanding of the power of thinking to create our world that underlies a lot of consciousness of humanity already. It's just not labeled, quote unquote, New Thought. Right. So when we talk about where New Thought is going, I think we need to acknowledge New Thought has an undercurrent of itself already in the culture. The question then becomes about spiritual communities or New Thought as a philosophy and where it's going. And I have to step back and say, in my mind, it sort of relates to New Thought is a tool for the furtherance of the evolution of humanity to remembering its truth of oneness. So that even without New Thought, and there are many spiritual tools out there that we can tap into that are teaching the same sort of thing. And if you go back and look at like Aldous Huxley and the perennial philosophy, for example, all of these things were pointing at a commonality of a direction towards which we're moving. And what is that direction? Well, it deals with involution and evolution, which is very quickly spirit embedded itself in all of this manifestation and allowed itself to forget its source. So we don't remember we're all sparks of the oneness of the divine. And we're evolving back to that in our awareness. So when we talk about enlightenment, we're really talking about ultimately these little sparks or divine sparks that we call human beings are remembering in their awareness their divine source. So we've gone out into the desert and wandered around, and we're returning home with a higher wisdom and knowledge of what that home is like because we've wandered in the desert. So that's where we're all going. That's humanity in general is doing that. So all the crap going on in the world, the wars, the things that are less than what we want, they're all aspects of experiences that are guiding us back in that direction. You may say, Mark, that sounds like BS because we don't want war, et cetera. Well, sometimes you have to have the contrast of that which you don't want to understand what you do want. And I think right now we're going through sort of one of many dark nights of the soul of the human experience collectively to move back into a higher awareness of the oneness of our source. So where is New Thought taking us? New Thought is like many other spiritual teachers and anyone who is teaching capital T truth is moving us back in a direction of recognizing that we are at our heart spiritual beings moving through a human experience, that our awareness of God or the divine is through our conscious awareness, that the conscious awareness that we have as thoughts create what we're going to experience, and that the ultimate truth is in the divine or in this return home to God. But in the meantime, we live and move in this playground, this Lila of experience that is a way in which we can live to moving and growing and remembering the truth. So New Thought is evolving in that aspect. New Thought's stressing of physical manifestation was a necessary tool for its next step, but always underpinning it was a divine unity of reality. You know, it's an interesting, as you know, I work for the archives and a student of Holmes, and I've been doing a lot of work of his more esoteric stuff. And I will give you my snapshot on Ernest Holmes is that when he was speaking to the people of America or the world at the time that he was teaching in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, he would speak of and stress there's a powerful good in the universe that you can use it, and use it for what? Well, where people was jobs, careers, relationships, etc. And we continue to be in that degree for a long time. But underpinning it was a mystical teaching of oneness, which he would get into more with the more advanced students, like at a Silomar or his Tuesday night invitational classes. He would get into more mystical teachings where it was all about experiencing and knowing oneness at the deepest level. And in fact, in one of his Silomar talks towards the end, he makes a statement, which I'll paraphrase. He basically said that the most important thing of our teaching is to get, and where we all need to be going, is in the deepest understanding and sensing of the oneness and divinity of our lives. And then he goes on to say, yes, manifestation of stuff is important, but it's not the end goal. The end goal really is for us to remember where we came from, to remember our unity. And when we do that, what does it do? It makes us recognize what a blessing life is. It makes us recognize that many people don't have necessarily the outward blessings that we experience, and what can we do to make this a better planet for everyone else? Because everybody that I'm seeing and experiencing, either directly in my own life or, you know, in empathy through worldly news and things like that, they're part of this oneness as well. What can I do to put us on the track towards everybody living their highest and best life in the world of form, and ultimately remembering their oneness in truth? And I think that's questions that New Thought needs to be looking at too. And I think we see a shift where it's letting go of manifestation of material wealth to experiencing and knowing unity and manifesting love and togetherness and oneness on the planet. And so I think the directions of all of our communities are about building those types of experiences. And CSL and New Thought in general, are about working with all of the other spiritualities that have the same message to bring about an awareness of our oneness, our true spiritual nature. I'll get off my soapbox for a minute now.
Yes.
Oh, come on.
Yes.
I did not.
And
You guys.
as I had so many thoughts rolling through my head. No. I had so many thoughts rolling through my head. I had to try to conceal it down here. But when I think about what you said, and when I look at the future of New Thought, I look at New Thought as this container, or if, as some of the ancient ones would say, this cauldron that has room enough for us to put in the science and the metaphysics and the dogmatic and the, and stir it up, like you said, and get an amalgamation, not to lessen any of the individual parts, but to allow them to commingle and find their place, like we're putting together this puzzle, and begin to understand, like, we live in an energetic world, and you were talking about, these sparks. If we go all the way down to the cell, we've done enough research on cell everything now, especially with stem cells. There is an intelligence and a spark at the very cellular level, which just grosses up to us. And so that story of oneness, that cauldron of, and at the heart of the cell that gives us life is the positive and the negative, right? It is that positive and negative interaction that gives us energy, that gives us life. If you take away and have only negative, no life. If you take away positive, no life. And so how do we begin to step into that kind of consciousness? And I think New Thought is perfect for that, because it allows for us to take a jigsaw puzzle that's been scattered all over the world and begin to put it back together into this one panoramic view of life as it is.
I love that, Elzia, because you're getting at the heart of the fact that even in this material world, if we take it down to the molecular level, everything, be it atoms, molecules, cells, on up to humans and beyond, there are two forces at play, a dynamic tension at play at every level. A cell has to maintain itself as a cell, which they often call that as agency. Everything has to maintain agency within itself as a whole.
Yeah.
But that whole is part of a greater whole, so that at the same time, the cell has to be in communion or love with other cells. And as we go from cells to, on up to multicelled organisms, to plants and animals and humans, every step of the way, something has to maintain its individual agency as that thing and give itself over to something greater. So there's two forces at play in everything in this manifest universe, which includes us. And so what we have to ask ourselves is, as I maintain this sense of Mark, you as Elzia, you as Robert, and that agency, I'm also communing with others in love and developing a degree of interconnectedness and relationship with something greater than me. So I have to maintain me and give myself up to something bigger than me at the same time. It's not the end of Mark. It's the greater expression of Mark. It's something higher and greater beyond here. And so everything is playing this dance.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a house of cards, because if we break the chain anyway, everything is going to collapse back downward. But we're moving to higher expression. So the question then becomes, what's that higher expression? And it's, I don't think it stops with humans. I think we are one aspect of the next step in this evolutionary return. We're just an important step that's made that self-awareness so that we can start thinking about our creative abilities and be co-creators in the process. But even beyond us, I think there's dimensions and realms of consciousness and expression that transcend us, and that we will continually be maintaining a sense of self and a greater sense of self, little s, big S, as we move.
And just real quick, you made me think about, we got all these tornadoes going on right now, but what you just described to me was just that. It's a perfect whatever, and then there's one little itty bitty thing that starts that spiral. You can see it forming, it goes into this thing, and then it just dissipates and goes away and spreads itself out into a whole nother appearance, if you will, because some of that stuff has traveled miles, some of the molecules, and now they're in the process of recreating something else. And I agree. I think as entities in this thing called life, no matter which level you come in at, that's the process. That is the journey. And the more we can tap into that, and what you said, I think, is the key, Mark, that story of one. There's only one thing going on here. And if we look at any level of science, biology, psychology, physiology, physics, it all at those individual levels, it points to one thing.
Right. Yeah. And so the future of new thought and anything we're really talking about is the shifting of our individual consciousness, our perspective on life. Because we all sort of walk around with a perspective where we're looking out from the sense of myself. But we have to also take the perspective of more and more other people and animals and life itself. So in the perspective of what you were just describing, can I put myself in the perspective of a tornado for a moment and see that tornadoes are birthed and die, and that they serve this wonderful, glorious expression of shaking things up? I wanted that house, and I may not want Toto flying around on a bicycle, in the air, but they have to be open to the idea that is serving some greater purpose. So what happens is, in our humanness and our limitedness of our perspective, we look out at life and we judge things through our current level of awareness. And so when I'm judging other things as negative, that judgment's really about me. Judge not, lest ye be not judged. It's really about our own, whatever we're judging ourselves. It's about us. And so when I say something out there in life is crap and bad, that's a talking about me and how I'm looking at life. Can I get to a bigger perspective where I see the goodness? Now but that doesn't mean I'm condoning bad behavior. Okay, so we can see things like war out on the planet. I don't want war. But there is a perspective I can get to where I can see that things like war are shaking things up, pointing to the contrast of what we don't want, and to bring us hopefully to the higher perspective of what we do want, which is peace and love and support for everything. Now, it doesn't mean I'm supporting war. It means I can, in a perspective, look at it from a higher vantage point and see it's part of a grand design that really is leading to goodness and growth.
Yeah. I want to bring Amy's comment in here real quick because she had said the cauldron or container has no boundaries. And I think that really fits in with where you are right now, Mark, because I don't want war, and it does give me the tension to see what I really do want. And we may not like what's going on in the political realm right now in the United States, but it points us to how we can create a more perfect union and how we can more embody what we say we're about. Peace, prosperity, and abundance for all, whatever those things may be. How do we become part of not the solution to what we see, because that still makes what we see wrong or bad, but how can we be part of the evolution of what we see into this world that works for all, that we talk about on this program a lot?
Yeah, and you got to keep in mind, what perspective are you looking at the world from? It's very natural for us to look at it from, gee, I'm Mark, I'm this world around me, this body, these thoughts. And from that perspective that's separate from everything, that's one way, and that's the way that's our default method of perspective of looking at life and judging life. But like we talked about earlier in the show, is that not only do we have to live in the world of form, but we also want to transcend the world of form. And we have to develop and cultivate that higher perspective of seeing things from the highest perspective we can. ultimately, I think it was Elzia earlier talking about the fact that, we're going to get to these higher states of awareness, but we never arrive. We never arrive. All we can do is approximate getting closer and closer and closer to it. And the higher we can get to that higher perspective, the more we can see the beautiful interplay of everything. And what happens then is we can switch back and forth. We can look at things from as close as we can from the divine's perspective of life. And then we can immerse ourselves back into the form. And yes, Mark here in Denver, Colorado looks at life like this. But I've also got to remember the transcendent perspective as well. And so we have to somehow or another develop both. And so one of the practices I do lately is, and this is a modification of Ramana Maharshi, where his self-inquiry method is always, who am I, who am I, who am I? Trying to dig into the fact that within me is really spirit. Within me really is the self-inquiry is finding the greater self, capital S self. I sit in meditation and I go, I'm not this world. I'm not this body. I'm not these thoughts. Who am I? If I'm not this world, these body, and these thoughts, who am I? Who am I? And so it leads me into sort of a transcendent awareness that I'm really something greater that transcends all of this stuff. I transcend my thoughts as Mark. I transcend this body that I'm walking around in. Yes, in the world of form, I have these interactions, these relationships in the relative world, and I have thoughts about them and judgments about them. But my ultimate truth is something that transcends this thing called Mark. And so what I have to do is bring bring those both perspectives into my life. My awareness has to be steeped and anchored into a transcendent nature that sees the fact that there is no time, there is no space, there is a transcendent oneness of which we are ultimately true from. But we're birthed from that, and we're having this experience. And so I need to be able to shift my perspectives between a grander perspective of oneness to the highest degree I can experience, and at the same time come back into the world of form and live Mark's life. So it's a matter of, yes, I'm not all of this. And here's the key, is the more I can go into the perspective of transcending this and really understand that who I am is transcendent spirit, the all, the one. The more that awareness comes back into the world of form and impacts how I relate in this relative world. It brings more heart. It brings more love. It brings less concern about what people think about me. It leads me into surrender into this life and its blessings. And so
I love it. And we're going to run out of time here because we could do this all day, folks. But before we do, Amy threw a question into the comments, and I think it's a perfect one before we take our next break. Does the divine have a perspective of life?
I would dare say the divine is life, right? There is what the creative source of the universe, call it what you will, it has put forth this thing called life, and that it shows up in various different ways. And as I think about it, I think about what Mark said, and I think about my guru from beyond, which is Alan Watts. He makes two statements that I always go to. He says, as long as we have a sharper knife, i.e. some tool to look deeper into life, it's going to be more mysterious and more defined and more defined and more defined, right? So this evolution of exploration and findings are the same. And then when I think about, he says about war, and Mark, I think, hit it on the head about perspective. He makes this statement in terms of that divine part of life. He says there is a war going on in each and every one of us right now that you don't want to stop. White blood cells are taking care of anything that's coming to the body that will destroy the body and life as you know it. And you don't want to stop those whites. You want them to be ready to fight, to cast war. And so again, it's that yin and yang. Life is all of it. Life is birth and death. There's not life and death. There's birth and death within life. And when we can look at that oneness, I think we find divine or the divinity is life itself.
Yeah, I would add to that it depends on what we mean by perspective in this case. I think that the divine has a vast perspective that is beyond our imagination. But the one of the things which transcends time and space. But the divine created each of us as individual expressions of itself for its own experience, or as often said, for its own bliss. Its bliss comes through the various experiences that we are having, and it experiences this life through us. So what you have is capital D, divine, who transcends all of this, but divine working through the essence of each of us as individualized expressions of itself, having an expression and a perspective that is limited. So we have, as much as we can practice and meditate and move into a state of oneness in our awareness, we still have a limited perspective. That's why I said a minute ago, we're never going to attain the total conscious awareness of all that is, of spirit. We're going to continue to have somewhat, in my mind, we're ever moving closer to it through our evolutionary return to spirit, but we're always going to be somewhat out of reach to a degree. Certainly in the human expression, we have no matter how much we are in quote unquote enlightened, we're going to have a limited perspective.
Yeah.
And that limited perspective is this perspective that the divine is having through us. So it gets both. It's getting the fullness of all that is. And then it gets to experience itself in that limited nature, in that egoic division that we have. Yes. And it's a blissful thing for it because it gets the best of both.
Exactly. Folks, if you wonder what you stumbled into today, this is New Thought Today on the New Thought Media Network. We're going to take another quick break and let some of our sponsors and individual donors say thank you to them. And we're going to come right back, though, with our final thoughts. So don't go away. Stay tuned. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a minute. Right after this. Please help us say thank you to all of our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Center for Spiritual Living United Life, Sunshine Cathedral, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Universal Joy Center, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. On behalf of New Thought Media Network, thank you, and please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, come be you. Yes. Thank you to all of our organizational sponsors and individual donors. It's thanks to folks like you that make this all possible and all of our programming possible. So if you didn't get enough of Dr. Mark today, tune right back in about an hour from now. And his show he co-hosts with another friend, Mind in Consciousness. It's every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Mountain Time, right here on the New Thought Media Network. So
Conversations in Mind.
Conversations, and I put it backwards? Yes. But tune in, folks, because it's more good stuff in that way. So let's get into our final thoughts. We've got about a minute here, guys. So Elzia, kick us off. Final thoughts for the day.
Yeah, continue to be open. Just continue to be open, which means go study, go ask questions, go look at things, turn them upside down, but be open for this thing called life to unfold, this mystery of life, this this overwhelming thing that we all love so much.
Yeah. Dr. Mark?
I would add that make sure that no matter what you're doing, that you are taking the dual perspective of seeing yourself as this human being, but also seeing yourself as this greater and grander spiritual being. And imagine yourself flipping between the two so that you don't always anchor your perspective in your physical form.
Beautiful. Thank you. For me, very much what you both you gentlemen have already said here this afternoon. There is a both and we have to be willing to look at and embody that both and that means we're not denying our humanness because we have to be holy or divine. We have to be bringing the divine into our human experiences. So beautiful conversation. Dr. Mark, I trust you'll be back again because, you're on the network all the time. So we'll have you back again.
Loved it. Had a great time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Folks, if you've had a good time here, please let your friends and family know what we're doing. This is New Thought Today. We'll be back again next Tuesday right here on the New Thought Media Network. Until then, we wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.